Hello and welcome to June's All the Everything. Thank you so much for joining me, whether you're joining live or listening to this on the replay or the podcast. And you may or may not know already, this is actually a very special episode of All the Everything, because for this one, I am joined by the amazing Jonathan Wilkinson.
It is a deep honor and pleasure to be back. It has been, of course, as ever, too long, but this feels a real blessing.
Yeah, and what a topic to make a comeback for.
Hey, we've picked an easy one just to put in a nice tight nutshell, haven't
we? Definitely. So, as Jonathan was alluding to, in this explorative conversation, we're going to be talking about the topic, why actualizing your wild sovereign is the most powerful way to create the life you long for. So all about wild sovereignty, diving deep into something that is so dear to our heart at Waking the Wild. If you've been around us for any amount of time, you'll probably have some sense of that. But this is a show where we are really going to, well, as deep as we can, given, as Jonathan said, we could probably talk about this endlessly for years. We're going to go as deep as we can in this 45 minutes and give you as much as we possibly can. And just really enjoy having, Jonathan often says, we have the most deep, weird and wonderful, mystical, magical conversations. And we also just sometimes feel like it'd be lovely just to be able to share those conversations with you all. So there's also that, there's just like a conversation between us that you're going to get to be a fly on the wall on. So shall we begin with what we mean by wild sovereignty, Jonathan?
Indeed. And yeah, let's get the ball rolling, because this is something like we could just easily spend all of our time just on defining this and then some. So let's start with the wild. The wild wilderness you can describe in many ways. One of the ways we like to speak to is the wild is everything that has not been tamed, caged, manipulated, domesticated, or conditioned. I believe it was Michelle actually used the word wholeness earlier, or whole, which I think is a word come back to time and time again. Wildness in many ways can equal wholeness. If you can imagine let's imagine a wild apple, something we'd call a crab apple, which is a tiny little thing. And then we get these hybridized ones at the moment. It's still an apple, but it's not whole. It's not kind of in its purest essence, let's just say. And so a lot of what we're going to be speaking to clearly is around sovereignty, but we've, for very good reason, used that word before it, wild sovereignty, as when it comes to sovereignty itself, there are as many ways to describe that as there probably is anything else. But a common one people would say is having agency, autonomy over one's dominion or areas of their life. And that's where we can make a distinction between, let's say, domesticated sovereign or domesticated sovereignty versus wild sovereignty, because you can have sovereignty, you can be sovereign over certain parts of your life. Let's say you can be financially seemingly sovereign. No one tells you what to do financially. You are financially independent and somewhat sovereign, yet there could be many, many other areas of your life where that isn't the case, both intrinsically and extrinsically. And so for us, what we're really being called into in these very challenging times is to navigate and find our way back to that wholeness without really having to go, like we often say, go back into the wild in a shack and eat bugs. And again, if you all thought that brilliant, go get it. It's guaranteed to be absolutely golden. However, we truly feel in our bones that we are here to uncover how we can thrive, how we can be truly wild sovereign beings and create and realize all that our soul came here to create. And that's the other key piece, which is the soul. This is as sacred as it gets. The sovereign is a sacred entity, spirit, archetype. And in many ways, that that's been distorted so much. There are many people who may judge themselves to be a king, for instance, because again, they've acquired a certain level of status. Doesn't really mean they're sovereign. Doesn't mean they're sovereign. They may be a king or have generated some level of autonomy and agency in a certain area. Doesn't mean they are truly sovereign from a sacred, pure, whole sense in the way we are going to be playing it out. So I'm going to pause. The ball is rolling. Lian, is there anything you want to add to that, or any way you want to roll that further down?
Yeah, so it's always very interesting when you and I come together to share our different experiences of something that, of course, we've got a shared experience and a shared definition. Otherwise, it wouldn't work very well, us teaching the things we teach. But of course, you and I are so different. I find it so interesting the way we will experience those things that are also unique to us. And as I was listening to you, I was just, of course, really in agreement. And then I was also thinking about the way I experience wild sovereignty, like in my body, like how does it feel? That was what was really present for me as you were talking. And as you know, one of the ways that we speak to that essence of the sovereign, that energy of the sovereign, is using the words love, grace, and power. And I'm just going to pause actually and say those words slowly and invite anyone listening to really feel into those words and see if you can feel them in your body. See if you can feel the resonance of those words. Love, grace, power. And then the alchemy of those working together. Oh, I really felt like this charge then, actually. And I've really noticed over the years as we've been, these are of course just words that we're putting to an experience. But what I've noticed, and I know you've noticed this too, is how much those particular words really resonate with so many of our clients and students. Like it really is that invocation of the sovereign for so many. And so I wanted to start there because I was already starting to sort of feel a greater activation of that energy as you're talking. And of course, that's the sovereign. We've now got the wild aspect. And for me, the sort of simplest way I could define that would be soul. And it requires so many things. And it includes so many things, many of which you were just speaking to. But it's like, if the simplest parts, if we can really hold our soul from love, grace, and power, we get the opportunity to be these wild sovereigns in our lives. And that's the first thing that was coming to me. Like these are just, things that we have to use words to communicate. And yet they are in some ways are so beyond words. We can feel them. We can feel them, which is also something that we talk about a lot. It's this energetic activation that's essential when we're working with archetypes, to actually feel them, feel the embodied energetic inside us. But anyway, that was the first thing that came to mind. The second thing was, of course, so much of our work is so magical and mystical and mythical, all those lovely M words, and it is, and yet there's a real practical application. It really is something that is kind of like when the rubber meets the road, it isn't just the stuff of fantasy. And I was pondering earlier, I went on a walk just an hour or so before this show, and as I was walking, I was pondering the fact we were going to do this and we're going to be talking about wild sovereignty. And I was like, I have right now, as you know, just such a perfect example in my life of how wild sovereignty actually feels. And coming back to those words like soul, love, grace, and power. And I'll try and do this in a really small snapshot. So I have got all the building work going on inside and outside my house at the moment. Ridiculous amounts. It's been going on for, I think, now over a month, and it'll be going on for about another month. And you know, anyone who's had building work done will know all the disruption and noise and mess that comes with that. And I'm autistic, so as an autistic person dealing with all this, I'm hyper sensitive to the noises and the mess and the change. So that's kind of like, that's the backdrop. And then, of course, I've got my normal life, my normal roles that I'm always going on. I'm a mother of 2 teens who are going kind of through their own initiations into young adulthood. I'm a co-founder and business owner with you, Jonathan. And of course, you know, that brings up all sorts of things that we're constantly journeying with. But personally, the material liberation that occurs for us, but also holding our clients and students through. I mean, right now we've got, you know, a good few that are going through really intense initiations themselves. Of course, all the other things, you know, our team, the podcast, all of these things. I'm going through a really intense phase of work with my shamanic work. I'm a wife, a homemaker, you know, I'm a leader and a member in various communities. So all of that's going on at the moment, and it is intense. I don't think there is a moment of the day that someone doesn't want my love and attention. I don't think there is a single moment. And I went for this walk and just had this moment of absolute appreciation for meeting all of that from love, grace, and power. And also knowing all of it's from soul. All of this is me living my soul-led life, and it's sovereignty that makes that possible. So that's what's occurring to me. It's like, it feels like this and it looks like this.
Yeah, those are, it's a beautiful place to take it, because it is, we're talking about, yeah, the purest of energetics here. And one thing we come back to time and time again on Waking the Wild is mantra: honor the sacred. Honor the sacred. It's the most simple rule, if you want to call it, for life. And there is that remembering, that reconnecting, that reclaiming of that felt experience that you were so beautifully embodying, and therefore exuding and inviting others to feel like that. Is when I was speaking to people who may refer to them as kings, or maybe see them as kings, that's usually a good benchmark. Like, are they coming from that superpower of sovereignty, which is deeply connected to the sacred, to love, grace, and power? You can feel that in people. You can feel whether that's a shadow king or a sovereign king. You can feel this. We have this sense within us. It's just, sadly, is the case, we don't have many points of reference. Gone are those days of being brought up in a way where there were, for the most part, I want to caveat that, for the most part, shining examples of this. Our environment, this is where the power of the wild comes in. We would experience this in so many forms in the wild, just through pure observation of this sacred unfolding of life, this sacred perfection of life in nature. And it's only really when we come into this modern world where all disease, be it mental or physical, stems from disconnection, and we have never been in a more disconnected state. Therefore, we have never been more separated from that is pure, whole, that we know to be true, and is that feeling itself. And so I think it's important also to say that we're speaking to a high benchmark here, and this is a never-ending journey. There is no end state when it comes to being sovereign. The spirit of the sovereign, the archetypes of the sovereign, all of the sovereign archetypes, they evolve as we evolve, as we grow, as our life changes. And so that's the beautiful and humbling energy of the sovereign. Is, yeah, the moment you think that's it, I'm there, boom, kickback. Like, something will come and humble you. And it's, yeah, we are constantly amazed and have the deepest awe and reverence for the spirit of the sovereign, and what is able to reconnect us to bring us home to live from. And yeah, right there. Again, could go on, but I'm going to pause. Otherwise, we're going to be just unfolding. But I love the way you spoke to it. And like that is, for me, where it is at. Albeit, then trying to navigate through this crazy modern world is where it gets very interesting.
What you said there about role models really stood out to me. And it reminded me of something that my teacher, Jez Hughes, often says, and he's talking about shamanism in this, but I think the example still stands. He says, in an indigenous setting, which he's very familiar with, given his work with the Murakami and the Wirakuta, and he says, very little will be directly taught. From a master shaman to their apprentice to younger kind of up and coming shamans, very little will be directly taught. It's role modeled, it's seen. You have to pay attention. You see what to do. You see the embodiment of the shaman in their work. That's how you learn. Yeah, actually, I love that, because I was about to say, you also, going back again to what we're talking about, you have the activation of it is happening on multiple different levels. And I absolutely see the same is true with sovereignty. Like, yes, we can be taught, particularly bearing in mind we're not in that kind of setting. We likely, just like, say, for example, for someone in a modern setting, learning shamanism, likely we will need more teaching because we lack the role models, because we lack the community. And that's just really hit me, how we don't have that. Most of us are bereft of sovereign role models, let alone wild sovereign role models. I was probably one of the, my goodness, like most fortunate children to have much of wild sovereignty modeled to me by my father. But I know that was rarer than rare. Most of us won't have that. And it's knowing that, like being honest about that. I mean, for us as adults, you and I am talking about here, I was thinking, like, we didn't really have much in the way of role models as we began this work. We had sort of aspects modeled to some places, but a lot of it had to come from really opening and studying and working with those archetypes ourselves.
Yeah,
and
to live them.
that is, yes, to live them, really allow ourselves. And that, there's that is going to happen probably for everyone. But there's also, if you do have the role models, if you do have the guidance, it's going to probably be, I mean, it's still going to be a challenge. It's still going to be a challenge, which is probably what we're going to get into. But like, my goodness, if we could have chosen that, I think we would have done.
Most certainly. But, well, some can argue we did choose this way. But
Yes.
it certainly would have been, let's say, the easier route.
Yes, absolutely. So I would love for you to talk a bit about what you see in terms of who wild sovereignty is for. Who's wild sovereignty for?
It's a great question, and it's one that I think you really need to answer that. Really got to step back and just appreciate that. God, what are we at? How many billion people do we have on this planet at the moment? And for me, wild sovereignty is for the old souls. It's for those who have come here with a real soul mission, let's say. They can feel it. They know, whether it's, as we describe it, a tug at the shirt cuff when they wake up in the morning, or a punch in the gut, that just lets them know there's something missing. There are those that are able to acclimate and integrate into this crazy modern world, into this domesticated state of existing, this disconnected state. And then there are those who who struggle in many different ways. And as Lian said at the outset, we are chalk and cheese. It's like we are yin and yang, which is why it aligns so beautifully for us to come together. And what I have personally experienced from that is actually very different to Lian. Lian has, she's a manifesting generator. For those of you who are aware of human design, I am a projector, which means just from an energy capacity standpoint, we are very different in terms of our buffers, our resilience to things. And so the reason I go there is because, and it is sad, I don't believe it's A, possible, or B, aligned for every single person on this planet to be at this, to get to a certain level of wild sovereignty that we're talking to. But you will know in your soul, in your bones, if there is just something that isn't aligning. And it could be something like it could be just an area of your life. So you may well feel that you have financial sovereignty. You have a business that is aligned for you. Or it may well, we see this very often, someone's like, I know sovereignty. Yeah, I got sovereignty down. My area is great. And then like they're not in a relationship, or it's not a certain type of relationship, let's say, that has the most powerful material for illumination, liberation, reclamation, acclamation, actualization, should I say. And that's what we're talking about, wholeness. The sovereign grows through taking aligned actions that are in alignment with our soul, not the matrix, not the domesticated world, with our soul. And it requires that rewilding process that we've been alluding to be able to reclaim that soul connection and then inform it. But it is in those most challenging of cauldrons, those most challenging of material for liberation, such as, let's say, relationships, where we really experience it. And so it's for those brave souls who know they have come here to really experience themselves, the totality of themselves, the wholeness of themselves. And and I'm going to pause at that point, because I could broaden this out in many ways, but really that is some of the markers that I think each person who's listening to this will be able to either connect with and have a felt experience and an appreciative experience of. And yeah, like I said, I don't believe this is for everyone. I don't think it's A, possible, or B, aligned, but I believe it is aligned for a hell of a lot of people, and those who have come here with deep, powerful soul missions.
What's really occurring to me, and we've absolutely named this a number of times, but it feels really important in this moment, is I think for most people, certainly the people that we tend to have join us in our crucibles, is they tend to, one way or another, become conscious of being called by soul first. They'll tend to have this sense, and it may not be very conscious initially. It may even turn up in ways that's actually quite unwelcome, illnesses and really challenging recurring issues, patterns of issues. It may come in all sorts of fashions, or it might be that like real just I am hearing my soul, which happens in particular kind of openings, initiations, like perimenopause and menopause for women being one of those openings where you start to hear your soul so much more powerfully. And I think back years ago when that started to happen for me, and there was a kind of, again, there was a process where it was happening and I wasn't aware it was happening. I didn't know it was my soul. And then there was a part where it was like, oh, I understand now, and I am devoting to that. And at that point, you and I hadn't consciously really understood the role of sovereignty. It was like we'd really started to understand the wild part of it, both the kind of soul itself, but also the setting that was required, that reconnection, reclamation of our wildness. And I look back at those times, and I know this shows up over and over again with our clients and students. And what we didn't know was sovereignty was required to keep choosing. You said something like the sovereign grows through, do you taking soul aligned actions? I think you
Aligned
said.
actions, yes.
And by that you do mean soul aligned actions, don't you?
Indeed.
And without sovereignty, that will be not just challenging, for most of us nigh on impossible. And the difference that sovereignty has made and continues to make on our journeys, because that call from soul doesn't get easier. Honestly, it requires more and more and more of you. And it's like at the same rate as you're kind of like deepening into living from soul, the sovereign needs to grow at the same rate to hold yourself through what it takes to make those aligned actions or make those aligned choices. And that's something that when we started to realize it, when we were like, my goodness, like this is essential. Like the difference, like just for us personally, the difference that made, but like, again, the way that revolutionizes people's lives who are already on the path of soul, it's like it can't be overstated, can it? It cannot be overstated.
It can't. There isn't, like you said, there's no other way outside of divine intervention where someone can have that experience, that level of actualization, that level of maturation without that.
I feel like what might be helpful, actually, and I'm either happy to do it or feel free if you'd like to, is to talk a bit about the sovereign price and the victim price, and maybe material for liberation. Or if you want to take one of those, and I'll take the other.
I'm happy for you to choose which one you would love to speak to, and I'll speak to the other.
I would like you to speak to material for liberation, and I'll talk to the prices.
Beautiful. Okay, so we have alluded to this already. Is the sovereign, the spirit of the sovereign archetype isn't one that comes kind of pre-installed, excuse me, and pre-actualized. I'm just going to take a sip of something. And I think I burnt too much Kapal earlier. And it's a very important part. It is one of the few archetypes that is actualized through maturation. And it comes at a certain point, comes at a certain time. And this is where the wild comes into this piece. Because usually in Indigenous lifeway, we would have had rites of passages. We would have had experiences in the wild, those of death, those of rebirth. You were speaking earlier to something, Lian, which was just bringing me to those points in life, those junctures in life that really connect to the soul and awaken the soul. And they are, in many ways, the bookends. And when we are out of sync with the cycle of life, the many cycles of life, we then don't have that activation and therefore that material for liberation. And that material for liberation is one of, like I said before, it's material that illuminates something. It's material that allows us to really summon the courage, the vulnerability required to open ourselves to that material for liberation. And it is from that we get to grow. It is from that consistency of, and you'll go into this, I was about to say paying the sovereign price, but you're going to kind of touch on that in a moment. But it's through that process of aligning yourself with that material for liberation, of calling it in, of being conscious when you meet that material for liberation from shadow, not from sovereignty, but holding yourself in grace, that purest of sovereign energies, being able to be with the reality of it because you've had the material illuminated, therefore it can help liberate. It is that material for maturation of, it is the more, we are always saying this, it's one of the most unwelcome things we say to people is material for liberation. It's like, there you go. And it's like, fuck,
Of the
it's there
many
again.
annoying things we
Yeah.
say.
Oh, exactly.
When it takes the biscuit.
It's one that for those of you who have journeyed with us will know all too well, and will have felt that unwelcome illumination and reflection of even myself or Lian speaking to the fact that this is material for liberation. This is material that's aligned with the highest level for your growth and expansion into who you came here to be, for the reclamation of who you are, to come home to your purest essence, to become whole, and to create and live from that place. That is what some of what material for liberation is, and it is the most unwelcome yet the most beautiful, sacred, rewarding thing there is in life. And most of the time we're able to celebrate it, aren't we, Lian? As is most of the people with us. And yeah, I'll leave it there for now, but it is the most essential thing. This is something as well which can kind of come up a lot, where there can be this sense of, and in some cases rightly so, but I'm not going to over caveat this, where life should be easy. Life should be just one unfolding blissful adventure of living in the oneness. And yeah, for some people, maybe so. For the vast majority of, we chose to come down here onto this dense earthly plane to grow, to experience growth. And I spoke to this recently with regards to the ginseng herb, of how the most powerful, potent medicinal qualities of the ginseng herb are those that have experienced material for liberation, material for maturation, those that have experienced harsh climatic conditions that have allowed them to meet that force, to meet that material and grow from there. And the reality is, without that, we become soft, we become disconnected from our heart, our soul, why we came here, the land, the spirits that are here to help guide and support us. And that is a very unwelcome place to be. So that's material for liberation. Tell us about sovereign price and the victim price.
Well, first, what really was striking me as you were talking, and you were saying, you did allude to this, but you were saying, you know, one of us often will illuminate to one of our clients and students, you know, this is material for liberation. But I was also appreciating the real power is when people start to really not just see, but appreciate material for liberation as material for their liberation themselves. And, you know, that again is part of that growing sovereign, that we experience something. It could be one of the most, you know, painful challenges of our lives. And it's not to bypass it. It's not to say this isn't painful. It's to wholeheartedly feel everything that's there to be felt and have that elevation of like knowing this is material for my liberation.
Yeah,
I
beautiful,
welcome it.
beautiful. And I just want to then link that back to what I was saying with regards to death. In the Western world, in the domesticated world, our relationship to death is just so distorted beyond belief that in many ways, the most powerful material for liberation there is death. And the way we can be with that, you know, firsthand. For you, the real awakening for you came from the passing of your father. You know, passing of my father was also an incredibly powerful experience because of how I was able to be with that material, that sacred, blessed material for liberation. And it is precisely that. It's when we can have that elevation, that felt sense, that experience of connection to our soul, to know, fuck, this hurts. But wow, is this for me? And be able to see this is in many ways one of the most clearest ways you can know when you're in your sovereign is you can see the beauty in life, the beauty in death, the sacred perfection of life in itself. And so just wanted to, I know we've touched on it, but I just wanted to bring that home with that point because I think it's really, really significant.
Yeah. It's funny because when you said something like, you said something about death, and then you said, as you know, and my mind did three things. It was really funny. I thought, but I haven't died. And then I thought, it's like typical autistic literal thinking. I don't remember dying. That was the first thing that came to mind. Then I thought you meant the shamanic burial initiation, which I may actually use as an
Talk
example
about
when I
material
talk about
liberation.
yeah. And then I actually didn't even realize until you mentioned my dad that's what you but yes, that really was in many ways one of the most significant initiations, openings, and material liberation of my life. It really was.
And continue,
But
may I add, also importantly, continues to be so.
yes,
It is a
very much
continued
so.
lived experience. Yeah.
So given that the burial initiation came to mind, I'm actually going to use that as an example of the sovereign price, victim price. So going back to the reason I thought it'd be helpful for us to illuminate what we meant by material liberation, and to do that first was so that it's really clear what we're talking about here isn't being a kind of martyr or hero for the sake of it. It's all about living fully from soul. In some ways, as much as, I actually really enjoy talking about sovereignty, is something that I really, find just endlessly fascinating and all of those things. In another way, it's like actually completely irrelevant for me. It's like completely pointless unless it's in service of living from soul. And so it's really helpful to recognize that that's what the whole point of this is. The material liberation will arise, which is actually allowing us to do that, to live more fully from soul. And yet we need to choose into it. We need to make that choice, which is where the sovereign price, the victim price comes in. So this is when we know our soul is calling us into something. We know, and that could be a letting go of something, a creation of something, it could be a relationship, it could be something in business, it could be any area of our lives. We know our soul is saying, this is what's next. And so the reason I thought the burial initiation was a good one is the vast majority of people would not choose to spend the night underground in a kind of self-dug kind of grave. Vast majority of people would not choose to do that. And yet it's been one of the initiations on my shamanic path. And so there was a very clear recognition in me that that was something my soul was absolutely like, this is aligned, this is 100% right for me. And it was material for liberation. It's not something that I would have kind of, freely chose or found easy. And yet it was very clear that was soul aligned. The sovereign price there is to really choose into it fully, not from resentment, not from victimhood, not I've got to do this, but really choosing into like, this is not only the forging of my sovereign, this is me living from soul. And the price is I need to go underground and experience all of the things that's going to bring up. All of the fears, the discomfort, even terror, all of that I need to experience. That's the price I'm going to have to pay to live from soul. The victim price, fairly obviously, would have been, I know it's soul aligned, and yet I'm not willing to choose it. I'm not willing to pay the sovereign price. I won't go underground. And obviously, I chose to pay the sovereign price. Otherwise, I wouldn't be using this as an example. But that example, which, sometimes our initiations, our material for liberation are those kind of crafted, created, chosen initiations. And of course, we create many of those in the work that we do with people. And sometimes they are life initiations that arise. Often it's a combination of both, often kind of within initiation we've chosen, material liberation is kind of called in as part of that. But that is, again, one of the things that for us personally, that conscious awareness of there are prices here to be paid, and this is what they look like. And I'm going to consciously, sovereignly choose to pay them. that's like, again, one of the sort of, and again, we've had so much feedback from clients and students about like one of the single most powerful things we can understand and embody.
Yes, and that, and also there's the material. I'm really feeling that the compounding effect on that, because you can have an experience that's material for liberation, but clearly the amount you can be liberated from that is due to a number of factors, but how open and receptive we can be to that. And so there are many things that can come up, which be like, oh, I've been through this material for liberation. Why am I not there? I've done this. I've dug my hole, gone in my grave. Why is it coming up again? And because it is a blessing that allows us to continue to be with it. Relationships is a wonderful example of that as well. And so, yeah, I was just really feeling with certain things, they are one-time event material for liberation. But what you tend to find is it's the continuation, that, again, the cyclical nature of them that keep coming round, that allow us to be with it in a different way, until that same material may come up some point in the future. And it is the most peaceful, blissful, loving experience you can have, because you can truly meet it. You can truly humble yourself before it and be with the sacred perfection of life, the beauty of life. And that is, again, when we don't experience that, when we don't have the evidence to inform our confidence that that is the case, it can seem like crazy talk. It really can. Like someone saying, no, seriously, dig a hole in the ground, spend the night in there, it's going to be great. You know, like without that loss, without that connection, it's very, very challenging. But yeah, I just wanted to tie that bit in, because yeah, the material for liberation and the sovereign price is something that we that evolves as we evolve.
Yes, it really does. There's something that came to mind as you were talking then. Let me just see if I can allow it to pop back. It was about that kind of, that re-experiencing of something that was once like unbelievably painful. And in shamanic terms, like that's so understood. There's a kind of initial kind of thrust upon us initiation that is, you know, devastating, you know, literally soul parts being sheared off kind of level of devastation. And then the healing comes through another initiation into the same wound. And then that allows us to reclaim and to heal. And it's that second initiation. And when I say second initiation, it sounds like there won't ever be two, but there won't be. But in that second conscious initiation, that's the one that sovereignty will hold us through in a way that allows that healing to happen.
Yeah, very much so.
So I'm slightly losing track of time, but I think we've got maybe another 10 minutes or so. So I'm feeling called to talk a bit about, having kind of laid out everything we've laid out, which again is a drop in the ocean compared to everything we could share. It feels right now that sharing a bit about why we've created or are creating Wild Sovereign, the Crucible, and the way that we're creating it, that feels really important. It's like there is something about wild sovereignty now that feels really important to speak to, which then leads on to why we've created Wild Sovereign.
Yes, yeah, no, that feels very aligned, as also that opens up us to be able to, it's very hard to speak to sovereignty, not very hard, but it's, you know, if you're going to speak to sovereignty, you really want to speak to some of the flips, which is the shadow. And the reason why we've been called by Spirit to create this offering of Wild Sovereign, as you said at the beginning, we worked with this stuff for many years, but we're really called to kind of create the this coming together, let's say, of all the things we've uncovered and have been illuminated to us, because there has never been more of a need for this. We live in the most seductive of times for our shadow, like just crazy times the most highly seductive energies we are bumping up against daily, which require the sovereign to be able to sense, first and foremost, discern, like we're speaking to before about at the beginning, defining sovereignty. Like sovereignty is only powerful as what you can discern, what you can be able to make a choice over. And so for us, as we were saying, like sovereignty in and of itself is wonderful, but if it isn't wild, if it isn't whole, if it isn't in a way that truly allows you to have sovereignty over all of your life, not that you have to do it all at once. And so, yeah, it's because of these times that I feel we've been really called to create it as our shadow, our wounding, our trauma, which is just huge for those of us brought up in these times, really needs it. There's no other way. There is, again, outside of divine intervention, there is very little to no way that we can create all that we long for, all that our heart and soul longs for in this life, both in terms of intimacy with loved ones, relationships, and creatively in terms of being of service to our local community, our tribe. Like these times, it's incredibly hard, getting constantly caught up in that incessant cycle of consumption and output. If we don't slow down, which is another sovereign price, which is one of the hardest sovereign prices to pay in this modern world, is to slow down. If we don't slow down, we can't open. And if we don't open, we can't receive. We can't elevate to be able to discern between what's there. And so I think just speaking to it from that perspective, never before has there been more need for this, for these souls that are walking this earthly plane at the moment, doing their very best to come home and to create all that they long for. This is the superpower, and that is why we are being called to create it in the way that we are and honor it. This is the thing, to really honor it in the way we're trying.
Something that was occurring to me as you were talking was actually another story has just come to mind, another Jez story. And he was with a group of people, like Westerners, with an indigenous shaman. And if I've got this story right, someone asked something like, how do I heal the world? And the shaman said, go heal your family. And oh gosh, I've got real emotion coming up then. Go heal your family. And that increasingly, for me personally, but I know for you too, has become such an important part of our vision, like why we do what we do. It's the people we serve, their wild sovereignty will ripple out. It will ripple out. Like first it will be for them in their lives, then it will ripple out to their families, then it will ripple out wider into their communities. We need that right now. Like we need that healing right now. And that just suddenly became really present for me. It's like this ultimately is all about that. It's all about each of us being those wild sovereigns in our families, in our lives first and foremost, but in our families, in our communities. And then it's like why we've created Wild Sovereign the way we're creating it is because those called, we really want to make this as accessible as we possibly can. We've done a number of things. You know, it's the lowest investment of anything we've created in many years. We've also, in fact, I'd love you to talk a bit about this, about how we've made a kind of, you know, one brings their partner free. I've said that in a really unmarketing-y way.
You buy one, you get one free.
And you know, really wanting, again, not that like this is for everyone, not that it's you know, kind of low level or anything like that, but because we know that people are being called, the people who are meant to be those wild sovereigns, being the healers in their lives, in their families, in their communities, we really want them to benefit from this. And so that feels just a really important part to, like, we've intentionally created this way for that reason.
Yeah, very much so. And there's always been intent behind us for this, but Spirit moved in ways to bump this one in front of a few other creations, didn't it, as
It really
well?
wasn't planned, was it?
Yeah,
Yeah, that's so
yeah.
true.
Which I think is an important thing to say. And like right from the outset, that was it. Those who are regular listeners of the show may have heard Lian reference one of the creations that we've been called to, which is Waking the Wild Soul, or Wild Soul, where it'll be, which is more at the beginning of the journey, but it was made very clear that the most aligned thing for us to do is to create this, and to not just create this in the most intimate way we possibly can, which is generally how we're moved to create these experiences, is to make it accessible as possible. And yeah, it's just been coming through time and time again. I had a dark vision quest recently, and yeah, it just came through very clearly that this is for, like you were saying, this is for households. This is for we're aligned. Of course, this, I really need to caveat with this, because for those who've tried to enlist and enroll their family members and loved ones in certain things, you know how well that generally goes. So yeah, but the invitation, the opening is there for loved ones to join you on this journey. And for us, the most powerful journey you can take, that which is illuminating and actualizing your sovereign, a journey that you will be on for the rest of your life, but it will be the most rewarding journey you can take to actualize your soul's path. And so for us, this has been a constant thing we've been coming back to. How can we make this more accessible? And so, yeah, that's just a wonderful example of that, in that for those who have already joined, or for those who will be joining, it is open to your loved ones, your partners, people of your household, or they don't have to live with you. Also, I could get really technical and logistical here, but I'll leave that for maybe another time. But yes, that sacred opening is there. We're aligned, and yeah, it really lights our hearts up when we really feel into how that ripples out, that compounding effect and the alchemy. Like, we know from working with people on their relationships, what happens when you can have two people sovereignly meet each other in relationships. Doesn't mean it's easy, but allows them to receive each other's medicine, to receive the material for liberation that is there. And that is what, I mean, just, yeah, I talk to many experiences, just myself and Lian are constantly experiencing these through our choice to come back to sovereignty time and time again. We had one earlier today that we haven't got time to go into, but it is constant. And the reward that we get from that is priceless, absolutely priceless. So yeah, I don't know if there's anything you want to add to that one, but that was just one area.
I just feel like I just want to share a really short story related to what you were saying, that I think illuminates so much of how we work and how we're moved. So as Jonathan was saying, he embarked on is it 3-day dark vision quest?
The 4 days.
4 days. So 4 days in pitch black darkness. And if you know anything about Jonathan, you'll know that he would have taped every possible source of light down. No light. So 4 days journey in complete darkness, which for me, that is yeah, way more material for liberation than the idea of, you know, spending a night underground or many of the other shamanic initiations I've been in. So firstly, that's really important to notice. Like, we're both in constant choices of that kind, doing things that do not come easily to us because we know it's essential for all the reasons we've spoken about. So no, Jonathan came out of that dark vision quest and said to me, it came to me in there that we should make it so people can bring their partners. And I said something like, oh, okay, yeah, great, wonderful idea. So what are you thinking? Like, we'll create a special prize for partners to join, or, you know, some kind of discount. And he's like, no, literally, they can just bring their partners. And as soon as he said it, I was like, of course, like, that's exactly right. And I just want to share that story because I think it illuminates just so much of like where we take our guidance from, how we trust in each other's, you know, when one of us hears something very clearly from spirit, the other's just like, oh, of course, yeah, that's what we're meant to do. And so, yeah, I really wanted to share that because I think it just shows that this is the place that we're making all these decisions from. And in some ways, this is kind of like a real life, living, breathing example of wild sovereignty.
Exactly. And that, like I said, coming together, that potentiating the amplifying effect of sovereigns coming together is in orders of magnitude beyond. It's at least 4 orders of magnitude beyond just someone being sovereign. If 2 people can be sovereign and come together in that union and that alchemy, it is incredible. And therefore, as we've experienced, you know, with people coming together in bigger groups of that, it's just full power. And that is the design of the system. That is what you observe. If you go and spend any extended period of time in nature, this is unfolding around you. And this is, again, what we're disconnected from. And so, yeah, we're doing our best to further that amplification.
We absolutely are. I just got a thrill go through me when you were saying about when a group of sovereigns come together. I'm like, that's going to happen in, I don't know if it's like 2 weeks time. Oh my goodness, it is going to be incredible. So we are almost up on time. Is there anything you would like to say before we close?
I just feel we just scratched the surface, haven't we? Of course, we knew this going in. There's so many things I can imagine, but none that I will be able to do justice to. But I'd love to just bring everyone back to that beautiful invitation that Lian was guiding, inviting you in, which is back to those sacred energies of love, of peace, of power, of soul, of the sacred, of the spirit, all things in life that we can just feel are off energetically comes from that disconnection, that severed connection with spirit, with the essence of our soul. And it is our wounding, the wounding that we have been blessed with and given from our formative caregivers, that we play out in our intimate relationships, that we play out in all of our life. And that is the most powerful material for liberation there is. And there can be so many seductive, alluring baubles, to use your language. You used that word recently, the baubles like on a tree that can kind of convince us that, oh no, there's another way outside of that. And I want to caveat that there's timing with this stuff. There's grace and to hold that lightly. But this is where the rubber meets the road, to come to it from this holistic place, to come to it from the most pure, true place that there is, the wild sovereign. To be a king of some shape or form, or a queen of some shape or form, in many ways isn't enough. It really isn't. And the only way we can truly discern is by coming home in the way we are and honoring and surrounding ourselves with people who can clearly say that, to open ourselves to be receptive to that guidance from spirit, from those souls around us. And that is, as we keep coming back to, the most powerful alchemy, the most powerful material for liberation, the liberation of who we really are. And so I'm going to squeeze that rather large nutshell in at the end.
So if what Jonathan just described is something that's calling you, go take a look, if you haven't already, at Wild Sovereign. And I'm going to read out again how we've described it on that page that's all about Wild Sovereign, because I think we spent a lot of time crafting this line to as succinctly as we could, given how long we've just been talking about wild sovereignty, as succinctly as we could, like to really describe what this journey of Wild Sovereign is going to be. The 6-week mythical journey to activate your Wild Sovereign and create the sacred compass essential to actualizing your soul's purpose. And that sacred compass is what we've been constantly talking, coming back to, this ability to discern, is this soul aligned or is it not? So if you want to go check that out, that's at wakingthewild.com/sovereign. As I really clumsily said, and Jonathan said far more graciously, partners come free. We begin on the 27th of June at 6:30 BST English time, and it runs for 6 weeks in total. If you have any questions at all, email us at team@wakingthewild.com and one of us will come straight back to you. Also, if you don't already know, if you've journeyed with us before in any Crucible at all, we have a special discount for you. So if you haven't already seen your email about that, again, reach out and we can give you the discount code. And I really also want to acknowledge those of you who have already made the sovereign choice, because it is a sovereign choice to even enroll in this. It's not going to be easy for everyone for all kinds of reasons. And so if you've already made that sovereign choice to join us for Wild Sovereign, really honor and acknowledge that choice. Really beautiful. Anything you would like to add to that, Jonathan?
Lots, but I think I just add one to that, this, in many ways, we're creating to be a sovereign toolkit for life. Probably do a better way of describing that than that, but this, because there are many, probably most of you, who are no strangers to sovereignty, have done lots of sovereign work, but there's the importance of having something to keep coming back to. We feel is just so important. And so it is our clear intention to create something that is going to be there for the rest of your life to come back to. Like we have created lots of ways of working and actualizing the sovereign. And all of those, many, if not all of those, will be put into this program in a way that will have you be able to come back to this time and time again. As with all of life, it ebbs and flows. Sometimes you are riding that wave of sovereignty and you feel you can do no wrong. The next minute you are taken under into the deepest, darkest place. And it is these tools that help shine that shard of light that brings you back home, that allows you to take the aligned actions to come back, to rise back into consciousness, into sovereignty, should I say, and recenter yourself once more with who you are. This modern world, as far as we can see, isn't going anywhere anytime soon. And so this is, like we're saying, this isn't like an end destination. You are going to be called to grow and evolve until the time you leave this body in this lifetime. And we are creating an offering to really bring together things for you to come back to time and time again, especially in those moments when we really need it. Myself and Lian can speak from experience. Like this, even I'll speak for myself, even recently in this year, I've had a couple of really, really dark experiences that have really pulled me under and challenged everything. And if it wasn't for what we've been speaking to today, these tools, these ways of working energetically, yeah, the chances are I wouldn't be here in many ways. And this is why it's so important. So I just want to add this, like, I just want to finish with that this isn't just a one-off. Okay, I've done it. Boom, let me go and do it. This is something to come back to time and time again. And knowing us, this is something we're going to continue to add to as well moving forward. We can't make any assurances on that, but this will at some point form an offering. And yeah, this will only grow and evolve as this modern world does, and the tools we need to meet the unfolding of this modern world.
I know we need to close, but I'm just going to add one more thing.
Get it in. Get it in.
We've been asked now by all but many of Waking the Wild alumni whether this is right for them. Though, you know, some of the alumni who are asking that question have been with us off and on for years, and of course all the time sovereignty and wildness would have been woven in, and it could also be people who have journeyed with sovereignty outside of Waking the Wild. And I think it's so important to recognize, firstly, everything you were just saying there, Jonathan, like these are like our particular way of teaching and activating sovereignty. We know is I remember I wrote a post a little while ago, something like life-changing, if not world-changing. And truly believe that. We see it happening. We see it happening before our very eyes, day after day. And so that's the difference. Even if you have already experienced a level of sovereignty, whether it be journeying with us or outside of Waking the Wild offerings, what we're going to be sharing really are like the first principles, those practices, the toolkit, as you were describing, of wild sovereignty, that is going to be something you can journey with your whole life. Because that life of living from soul doesn't stop until you finish this life, and then it goes on in a different form. And so the way we're going to be teaching this is going to be something, no matter your level of sovereignty or even wild sovereignty, this will be incredibly, I can't even think of a word that allows me to sort of say it and then say I'm like still not overstating it, but like just incredibly powerful.
Yeah. It's hard, easiest way is just think it's hard to conceive of anything more powerful.
Okay, so the link again is wakingthewild.com/sovereign. And you've got a little bit more time, so it's not too late to join us. If you're hearing something and this is for you, we would love for you to join us. And again, if you have any questions, email us at team@wakingthewild.com. I think that's us done.
Okay, stick a fork in it.
On that sacred note, thank you so much for listening. Lots of love. Goodbye.
Thank you, everyone. Goodbye.